Okay. What's happening here? Greetings, brothers and sisters. This is Wednesday, December 17th. Let's move this forward here.
Oh,
All right. So, I covered the end of the kind of very disappointing Candace Owens recalling her meeting with Erica J. Kirk, right? And then she released this video. I completed this whole video, and it's I want to make it shorter because I've just released a 5-hour video. I've done the voiceover at the end. This video wasn't going to be up till tomorrow night, so I haven't rendered it yet. But I turned off the computer and everything, and I saw that she had another video, and it gets very pointless. It says something about something, I don't know, that didn't really impress me. The title of this video is "Breaking News: We Received Photos of Charlie Kirk's Car." But she says something that speaks to all of this. So I want to start this video with this. This is the only part of this I'm going to cover here. I don't think I'll cover it anywhere else either, but this is wonderful.
okay, ladies and gentlemen, get ready. I am telling you, get ready. We have an explosive episode today. Actually,
It's explosive. This fucking episode. I mean, the rest of them are duds, but this one's like a real firecracker.
say it's a non-explosive episode, and you'll see why. We're going to jump right into this because after yesterday's episode, we were contacted by a variety of people with information, and it's
information, little information. It's me, Candace Owens, the princess. Information. Everybody wanted to talk to me, not Erica. After that meeting, they're calling me the princess, Candace Owens.
time to state unequivocally that the steel neck quotation did not come from the surgeon. Okay, not only that, but it's odd that federal agents were, I would say, too involved at the hospital. When I tell you this story, your jaw is going to hit the floor.
It is my jaw because her stories are so jaw dropping. Like, I mean, it's never happened before, but this one it will. Like this, she's going to deliver this time. But here it comes. This is the big line right here.
We also have never before seen photos of the vehicle. I know I sound like a Fed here. That Charlie was transported in to the hospital.
No, here it comes. Right here it is.
And they were trying to save his life. I'm telling you, my perspective is that all of these leads are ramping up. The reason for that is because the general...
All these leads are ramping up. See, I've talked about this before with her. And, my being a participant in the so-called truth community and knowing about things that happened before and knowing about things that happen that will happen in the future in terms of these truth or narratives and videos and investigations, not one of them have led to anything, right? Not any of them had led to anything that is substantial change or anything that you would call significant development. It has allowed people. So let's start with with JFK. I think the amount of people who don't believe the official story was around 60% by one poll. I can ask ChatGTP here in a second, but a while back it was 60%, and 50% of people didn't believe in the official story around 9/11, and so that's something in terms of people's beliefs. And people kind of understanding the true nature of our system and these things, yeah, that's something. But other than that, there's fucking nothing. And I talk about this a little bit in this video. Nothing ever happens. You're never going to see any change. It's not going to. No one's going to jail. And even if it is, somebody goes to jail. It's some patsy. I mean, nothing ever develops for any of these things. No one ever gets to the bottom of it. The truth is never acknowledged. There was the Operation Ajax where the CIA deposed the moderate, democratically elected leader of Iran named Mossadegh. And Iran was a very progressive country that was a part of which would be the globalist society. And this Mossadegh, who was the kind of leader that America says they want in these foreign countries, open to, business with, whatever it is, a capitalist, right? Again, it wasn't a religious repressive regime like they have now. But he wanted 50% of the profits from the oil business, that British Petroleum, not an American company, was taking 80% of the profits. So they asked the CIA to intervene. The CIA destroyed this guy, got him arrested, got a revolt started there in Iran. They put in the Shah of Iran, and then the Shah was a fucking disaster, bloodthirsty, opulent piece of shit, right? And because of that, the Iranian government toppled, and it's been a problem ever since, right? And they admitted this 63 years after, when everybody knew what happened. It was even in movies like Argo. So even when they admit to shit, it's well after people care about it, right? So, the rare case they do admit to something, there's nothing that ever comes of it because it's so late in the game that it's long after people cared about it. But usually they don't admit to things and they just go down as historical record based in fabrication, lies, and illusions. And so for her to say this line here, let's listen to it again, right? This silly fucking line.
Vehicle, I know I sound like a Fed here, that Charlie was transported in to.
Those fucking feds suck. You want to sound like one of those feds, Candace.
To the hospital when they were trying to save his life. I'm telling you, my perspective is that all of these leads are ramping up.
There's this promise that there's going to be some resolution, right? You could have had some resolution if you and Erica had a conversation, even a 5-hour conversation, where you had it in front of people and you showed all the things that she showed all the things. You guys showed all your stuff, right? I mean, not your stuff, but like your information. And if you guys had that conversation live, it would have been something. It would have been something better than this, but it still wouldn't have led to anything. Erica Kirk's not going to change her position. And, this Patsy's going to be convicted or whatever is going to come of this. And nobody's ever going to know the official story. People all speculate, and the speculation is growing more and more. Now it's electrocution and some other bullshit that you'll hear about here. It's always something different, but nothing ever comes of it because even if you discover the truth is not verified because the people who verified the truth are the criminals that run the system, and they are the biggest liars and the biggest deceivers. And so they just won't give it up. They won't acknowledge the truth. And because of that, that's the kind of system we have. This stuff never goes anywhere, right? And there's, I think, something else here.
For that is because the general public is actually not receptive to what is very clearly a military-grade psychological operation, complete with influencers and botted activity.
Okay, you know what? Somebody let me know when she finally finds some fucking thing that leads to something that's substantial. Not some fucking goofy story that's going to take you further down a rabbit hole with Egyptian planes and, Martian dildos and fucking... and the battle of the angry twinks. And so, there's nothing here. You discover things and you see things, you have deeper knowledge than other people. You're capable of more gossip. I'm not talking to her. I'm talking about people in the truth community. You can say more words. You can have more ideas of what's going on. You get the idea that you understand that the official story is bullshit. But then your speculation and your, I watched this video and this guy made a good case for this and our guy made a good case for that. And, it doesn't mean anything. It means something to you if it helps you in some way. I think I talk about it in this video. I talked about it in the last video. But it never ends up being anything. There's never any, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Just more rainbow and more twinks. Right? There's no leprechaun. There's just a twink giving you the middle finger. There's an angry twink giving you the middle finger. So anyways, there's that's going to be a good title for this video. There's no leprechaun with a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, just an angry twink giving you the finger. And so with that in mind, let's get into it here. Okay, so greetings, brothers and sisters. Wednesday, the 17th of December. This is the last video that I'll make today. This will go up on Thursday. Tomorrow, Friday, I'll take off. And then I'll make a video that'll come out on Saturday morning. And so the last video got away from me because I was making the video before Candace came on. And I didn't even know she was going to do a show. It didn't seem like she was. She said she was, but I didn't know if she was. And so I was going to end that video, and then she popped up around 5 or whatever the fuck she does. And I was going to cover a little bit of it, but the video ended up being 5 hours long, which I'm sure people are going to complain about, but that's just the way it is. So for those people I'm going to make this video short. This is going to be a continuation of that video. I want to cover this one clip. I'm going to do comments that are pertaining to all this stuff from yesterday, and then I'm going to do whatever's left of this, this debacle with her and Erica Kirk. And then we're going to move on to whatever else. I think this will drag out for a little bit, but it came to sort of a climax. And I'll take a look at TPUSK and see if they say anything about this, right? But I want to keep this one short anyway. And I'm not doing a good job because that took what I just said I could have cut that in half. But let's get to Mikey McCoy here.
But Mikey's call logs, big piece of this, okay? I'm going to, I guess, jog your memory on what Blake said about Mikey that day, and then I'll tell you what actually happened, because I don't think Blake has that great of a memory. Okay, take a listen.
So I was not with Mikey, or I don't remember being with him. I think I was ahead of him as we left.
This is what I call the angry twink.
And then we get out, and I run for, can't have been more than 15 or 20 seconds. And then I realized there hasn't been another shot, so the shooter has likely been detained or stopped or something, not in immediate danger. I pause, I look around me, and I see Mikey. And I see Mikey there. And truthfully, I will never forget what I saw, because I've seen Mikey almost every day for the past 2 years. I know his personality very well. He's a very bubbly guy. He's a very happy guy almost all of the time. And I'll never forget what I saw, because it was clear in the moment that he was profoundly freaked out. What I'll always remember is the way his lip was quivering, which I'd never seen before. And you very rarely.
It seems like a very weird thing to say. Makes Mikey sound like a little bitch. They got a parade of twinks over there, but this turns out to be he didn't remember right based on what she's going to say with the call logs. That's why she's screwing this guy over. But you just saw somebody shot, and more than likely you're going to go into a state of disbelief, right? Like, it's just people are running and you're like, whatever. You're not going to be yourself. Like, you're going to be almost out of your body, run. Like, this is, they knew the guy, but unless you knew it was going to happen ahead of time, your first reaction was be like, you get into these situations where you're just reacting and you're not thinking. You're not like, you're bewildered. If they're up on stage, so they see Charlie's fucking body, they see blood gushing out of his neck, so, that's what you would go into a state of like shock, a disbelief, fight or flight, and you would go run, and you would just not be conscious, right? Like, memories of that moment would be, it would form maybe a deep impression, but you might not even notice. You know how, like, you ever look at somebody and you're so inward, you're so internalized that you're thinking about something, and somebody's like, hey, it's me, like somebody you know really well, and you walk right by them, and you're so engrossed in your own thought. This happens to me more than probably the average person. But you're so, concentrated on what's going on inside of yourself. You're oblivious to what's going on. You see this with phones. When people are looking at their phones, and they're not hearing what's going on around them, right? They're oblivious to it. And, I worked at this activity center, and there was, this was in Los Alamos, and there's some really brilliant kids. And this kid was always wanting to play me chess, and I was beating him quite easily at the beginning. But, his brain was developing, and I had reached my maximum chess ability unless I read books, and I wasn't willing to do that. He started to beat me, and, for a while we were, I'd win some games, he'd win some games. And the matches were so intense, my boss said he walked in one time, and I didn't even notice him, right? Because I was concentrating on the chessboard. And so, you can be so focused on things. And so when this thing happens with Charlie Kirk, this idea that that's what your takeaway, you just saw blood gushing out of Charlie Kirk's neck, but your takeaway was Mikey McCoy's lip was quivering, right? It's a weird thing.
From someone that he was freaking out. And then I think he literally said to me, I might be imagining this, but I think what he literally said was, and then he was looking around, and then he says, I need to call Erica. And then he takes his phone, and he begins calling Erica, and I don't want to disclose how that call unfolded, but he did that, your mind extends all of this, but that is happening within a minute of all of this occurring. I remember he calls Erica. Around the same time, I pull out my phone and I call my mom just to say, Mom, there's been a shooting. You're going to see it on the news. I'm okay. Pray for me. I've got to go. And I remember that call. And around the time I put that phone away, and then he immediately calls his dad. He calls Rob McCoy. And he says, Dad, someone shot Charlie. You need to call all of your pastor friends. Charlie was hit. We need everyone to pray right now. And that's what he told him.
Okay, so the problem here, she's going to destroy this, his account with the phone logs, which is understandable given what he just saw. But, what happened was Mikey McCoy seemed to be holding his phone while Charlie was shooting, and then put the phone to his ear and start talking to somebody immediately, like within seconds, like within less than a second, he seemed to be talking to people. And they said what he did was put his fingers in his ears, because the crowd was so loud. And his phone was in his hand, so it made it look like he was talking. Like fucking weird, stupid shit, right? And then Blake gives his account. Rob McCoy's father said his son called him first. And then Erica said she called her first. And so they had all these different stories, which is like when something looks suspicious and then you come out and you guys don't get your fucking story straight and everybody's telling a different story. And then the logs come in. And they say, and I don't give a shit about this stuff, but I mean, I'm just showing it because this is, it's so fucked up, right? There's so many different accounts.
Okay, so that's just not right. And so when he says, I might be imagining this, I'll never forget, followed by, I might be imagining this, probably means that maybe you forgot and like you really could be imagining. Now, for me personally, I think the normal physiological response in these high adrenaline situations for most people is you lock in. That they're literally your body, when it goes through something, when it's terrified and it's going through like sort of like you are really paying attention to details. We've learned about this many times over in health class growing up. This is why they talk about that fight or flight response, and quite literally there's stuff happening to your body. And so there's a lot of details here that are just not accurate. And the one that surprised me the most about these call logs is I certainly feel that we were given the impression over and over and over again that the first person Mikey called was Erica. Right?
Well, they said that. Like Erica said and various people said. I don't know what Mikey said. I think, this story was different with each person already. So they had a problem because they didn't get their story straight. Because these people aren't even connected, right? They're not like, they're coworkers, but they're not, they're not now working with the same goal in the same organization.
He called Erica. We were told this by many people also that he trained like he almost went to a camp and trained, and Charlie was like 1 2 3 go, and fast 1 2 3 go. That's why he walked away. 1 2 3 go, and just told him this is what the first thing you do is. Well, he didn't do that. Actually, the first person he called was his wife. He called Elizabeth McCoy, and then he stayed on the phone with his wife for 10 minutes, and during those 10 minutes he three-wayed Erica 3 minutes after the shot went off. And then he three-ways his father, and then he three-ways a third person who I am not interested in mentioning because it's not relevant.
So here, Danny McCoy calls Mikey McCoy at 12:02. And they were on the phone right before Charlie got shot, right? So it'd be good if they had the seconds here, because seconds matter. And I don't know if they have that, down to the second. By 12:23, Charlie is shot. By 12:24, Charlie brought to the SUV by a security detail. Mikey McCoy has his phone in his ear the whole time. Like he's holding his phone up to his ear. That's what the video said. A minute later, Mikey McCoy calls his wife. So that's the first person he called. Remember, Charlie said, as soon as I get shot, call my wife so she knows. And there's actually, not that these people are spiritual or they're godly people, because they're all fucking, they're horrible people, but they're, frauds. But, it is kind of important what if you're praying for the soul at that moment. Like, the moment of birth and the moment of death and the moment of conception are all very important, that specific moment. Of course, getting a phone call that quickly, but the quicker the better. But Mikey McCoy was instructed to call Erica, and he calls his wife, and we don't know, how quickly that happened, right? Like how was it 30 seconds? It was 20 seconds. Was it over a minute? Like how long? But these are all, it is what it is. But their story isn't straight here. Blank Neff calls his mother. Call lasts 45 seconds. Blake Neff's phone call ends with his mother. Mikey McCoy adds Erica to the call. They talk for 2 minutes. Mikey McCoy drops Erica from the phone call. Mikey McCoy adds his father to the call and tells him pray for Mikey or Charlie, and then he ends his phone call with his dad. Then he ends his phone call with his wife 2 minutes later, and then his brother calls him again. So, how did his brother know? Like, was this event being? I don't think this was being streamed. Whatever the fucking thing is, this is fucked, right? It's a weird set of circumstances, and they've lied about it, right? And I don't know why they gave these phone records when, these people all have a different story going into it, and so this would have been really bad had they done this live. Like, this is an example of, again, you're raising more suspicions by the decisions that people are making, and like the fact that he was talking to his brother right before. It seems like his family could have been involved, and they knew it was going to happen ahead of time, and these things, right? Like that's the impression that people are going to take away from all this, and it's not. This isn't evidence that exonerates them or confirms this, but it definitely makes it more suspicious. Okay, so I want to get some comments, specifically one comment that was, I think this is the comment here, but all of them. So this is a video. It's getting really cunty in here, which was kind of a great title. It's something my brother would say, the word cunty, and then I heard Louis C.K. say it, and then recently, and it brought that back to my memory. And he's talking about how Erica Kirk. His hands look like a mannequin because they had to do heavy makeup to cover the electrocution burns from the microphone. So this is people who believe in that story. People get locked into these things, and it's silly to get locked into because, you have probably 10% of a story. Like you have a 10% proof or 10%, possibility that the microphone story is real. Like it's, there's, I don't know, I'm just throwing out 10%, but it's a small amount. Like you don't have enough. It's just speculation. It's not true. It's not real. You saw a video of people saying this, right? But this person writes, his hands look like a mannequin because they had to do heavy makeup to cover up the electrocution burns from the microphone. Hence why Monica made the weird hand kissing video. Even then you can still see the wounds on his hands that should have been there. Well, she didn't have to make a video with his hands at all. Like she didn't have to show his hands, right? So if it was electrocution burn and there was evidence, they wouldn't show the hands, right? She didn't have to make that video 24 hours, within 24 hours of them being shot. And they're like, oh, his hands are all burned, so they had to slap in heavy makeup. She didn't have to do that. Like the video didn't have to be made at all. It was a disastrous video. She didn't have to show his body. The whole thing. And they certainly didn't. They could have done it before she put her hand on his chest or whatever. But, the fact that he wasn't wearing his wedding ring has caused all kinds of problems. And, you could say, well, that wedding ring was melted by the electricity. But, they didn't have to make the video. So, this thing that you're saying, if there was evidence of electrocution and the hands were burned, which why would they be? What kind of amount of voltage do you think they sent through the microphone, right? To electrocute him, and his body didn't move in terms of the video like he was electrocuted. It wasn't like he was, and so you believe something and it could be true, but it's probably not, and it certainly isn't a slam dunk. And it's weird how people announce their beliefs. I don't give a shit. I don't even know I don't know anything. It could be live, it could be dead. This could be hologram. It could be all those things, right? Dude called Barry Coleman put on a rather convincing video with pictures of clear electrical burns all over post-decoy shooting. His hands and arms were fried They seem to be taser marks too. Seems they finished him off in the vehicle, hence the broken neck bone at the strangulation point. Pretty dark, makes a lot of things that didn't make sense about it. Makes some sense. No, not that it matters, but it's a curious development nonetheless. Well, this person announced it like it happened. There's all kinds of videos like this. This happens with all these things. There's all these different theories, right? And then people like I said about thermite in my last video, and then people say, no, it was a electrical beam. I'm pretty sure it was a nuclear bomb. I'm talking about September, the big event in 2001. But, it just doesn't matter. Like, somebody makes a very convincing video, yeah, but, you can doctor anything. People make convincing videos. That's disinformation all the time. And, if you want to go that route, it's fun. It's not but, it should be lighthearted type of stuff. But the issue here is if he had really deep electrical burns, then she doesn't need to show his hands, or they could have had somebody else sit in the casket and not Charlie. Those hands look really fucking weird. I mean, they didn't even look normal as human hands. They look like they were made out of prosthetics. So, whatever the thing is, I mean, there's no reason for them to put him it would be a closed casket type situation. I just went back and rewatched the video. There's pictures of her bending over the casket with his hands. The first picture. There's a second video where it shows, her doing that thing and crying and saying, I love you, and putting her hands on his hand, which is a disaster. But it starts up at where the tie is, right? And then she kisses his hands, and that looks weird. And then they put a picture out with her hand in his hand, and his hand looks fucking weird. And so, unnecessary. They didn't have to end the video at all. But if there was any kind of evidence that would have hurt their case, again, she starts off as the lapel with her one hand, and the camera pans. You've seen the video. Go watch it on her Instagram. But the camera pans over to his other hand. It goes from his chest to his hands, and then they show a picture with her and his hands later on, but no picture of his face. And so it didn't even have to be him. Or they could have put another fucking corpse in there, right? They didn't show his face at all. And then that was it. There was no wake as far as I know. And certainly there was nothing, in terms of a real funeral. The whole thing is weird. They don't need to do any of it, right? She did not need to make that video. That video was totally 100% unnecessary. And it's caused nothing but problems and mockery. And so, I don't think that was, unless they're doing that because they want people to, this is all part of it. That's the only explanation that makes sense other than her just being off on her own doing stupid shit and not being correctly handled. Either they wanted her to make a fool of herself and make it look suspicious, or, she's just off on her own doing fucking dumb shit and causing more problems for the official story. But the bigger point is you have to get comfortable not knowing things, right? It just doesn't matter. It just, the person changes their tone at the end of the comment, but the beginning part of his comment is clearly, his hands look like a mannequin because they had heavy makeup to cover up the electrical burns from the microphone, because you watched the video. There's all these videos that are very convincing. Everyone has a story, and people are good at convincing you. Liars are good at, or just people believe shit and they put it out there, or, whatever the reason is. You're never going to get the fucking truth, right? That kind of truth, because it's all fucking lies and it's all, levels of deception. Okay, so I just looked at Turning Point USK's channel. Fucking, and I want to get back to what I was saying here. This is part of it. There was the two, evidence. One was that it was easy to get on the roof, and the other one was, well, with all the evidence that's available, the guy looks like he's was the assassin. And then this guy says the guy pointing to the guy, he didn't act alone. But, they're thinking it's a bunch of furries. So they put out a video after that, amazing parallels between Charlie Kirk and George Bailey from It's a Wonderful Life. That's the fucking video they're putting out there. Holy shit, right? Candace is now disclosing all this information. Where the fuck is Erica Kirk to give her side of the story and to say something? There should be an immediate response. That's not going to go well. But, going back to this thing with, all these stories and all these speculation, We know that the crime scene was tampered with. We know that there's all this inconsistency. We know that fucking Turning Point US Gay is a complete mess, and things are coming out about that everywhere. Like it's just like a dam that's leaking. They can't stick there's not enough fingers to stick in the holes of the dike to keep the water from bursting through, right? And so, and everything is like suspect. And we know that Trump is backed off on Jeffrey Epstein and they're leaking out information and it all looks bad. And, there's enough information out there that Trump and him were besties and all that shit. Like all of it, right? But something that I have to say over and over again, we don't have any leverage. There's no leverage here. And so, with no leverage, it doesn't matter what they say or don't say, right? It doesn't matter that they're incompetent or things don't make sense or it seems like they're lying. And then there's just all these other theories that people throw out there that just muddy the waters. But even if everybody agreed on one theory, it still isn't provable because they control what's fact and what's not. And so that's where we're at, right? But if they're looking for like TPUS gay, if they're looking for viewers or support, they're not going to get it. And if they're looking for votes like Trump, they're not going to get it. But other than that, there's no way to hold these people accountable because there's no leverage. Like the only thing that's left is like going apeshit with a mob. Like that's all, and that doesn't do anything but destroy. Like you can destroy the system. There are a couple more comments. I might get more to some of these other ones that I haven't read yet later today. But this person writes, your ex may be experiencing dissociative identity disorder, DID, formerly known as multiple personality disorder, or borderline personality disorder, or extreme emotions. Definitely not schizophrenia, which involves hearing voices. Hopefully she will be able to work on integrating the various personalities to become more and more complete as a whole person. Like, why? Why did you write this comment, right? Like, I've discussed this in depth. The borderline personality disorder probably is fairly accurate, but she's thought that she would become schizophrenic, meaning that her mind would... I told this story about how I was watching all this MK Ultra stuff, and my ex had a very similar story. And the parallels from what these people were saying, and I don't know if these people are being accurate. There's no way to tell, right? Because they're fucked up. Like they're... if you've gone through an MK Ultra program and they fucked with your mind, or you've had severe sexual abuse and your mind is fractured, or physical abuse, or all these things, people who are really fucked up and broken, they're broken and there's no fixing them. Like they can get better in terms of managing their stuff, but they're going to be an absolute emotional and psychological mess. And they have all these things inside of them they're repressing, whether they're alternative personalities or traumatic events they've sealed over and they're, repressed memories and shit like that, that they just fall apart, right? Like when all the time, because things get pulled up and trigger them, out of the blue. And, some of it maybe become performative because they get sympathy. Like they become this psychological victim mess, right? And so there's no, again, there's no helping me or that or whatever, people all have their, like, oh, I have something to add here, right? Like you don't. Like it's just... I've talked about it. I know as much as anybody's going to know about it, and it still doesn't matter. Paul, my favorite spiritual heartfulness needsness. I love Jesus like Paula. There's a person that keeps on calling me Paula, and I must have banned the person a bunch of times. And I'm like, that's just not an effective burn, right? Calling somebody the girl version of their name, especially when... like they're not effeminate, like, it's not... What do you think? Where are you going with this? Like they're obviously doing this to, like, I don't know, hurt my feelings or say something. And it's just really lame. And then that person wrote an earlier comment. Wow, Paul is so smart and deep. He much smarter than Jesus. Like you can't even complete a full sentence. Like what are you doing here, bro? So this person I think has written comments and then I ban them, and then they come up with like a new thing, and they come back in like they got something going on here, like it's effective in some way. It's just weird shit. While Paul is so much smarter and deep, he much smarter than Jesus, Holy Spirit. Well, I'm definitely smarter than the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit doesn't have a mind, right? The Holy Spirit doesn't have a brain, so everyone's smarter than the Holy Spirit. In terms of, the the way what we think about being smart thinking. The Holy Spirit doesn't think like that because it's a disembodied soul, or whatever it is. I don't know. He's much smarter than Jesus and the Holy Spirit. So great to learn, not to be doomed by the other losers on Commodore 64. You're wasting your time. I don't know. There must be a better use of your time. Because the whole thing is, I'm not saying anything about Jesus because we don't know what Jesus was actually like. What my biggest point is that the Bible isn't an accurate reflection of Jesus' teaching or who Jesus was. And they've manipulated the story. And so we don't know when they quote things in the Bible if those things are even accurate, right? I say this over and over again. It's more a commentary on the Bible and the religion than there is on Jesus himself because we don't know what Jesus was or wasn't because they've made up all this shit about him, right? Like that's, and that's a solid point that no one can really debate because it's true. They've manipulated they've edited out things, they've changed things. There's different versions of the Bible. It's gone through, all these processes to, they had an agenda and they made the story fit the agenda. They made the Bible, so it's not the Word of God because it serves as an agenda, and they decided to manipulate the content, and then it's also how they discuss the content and how they interpret it, and that's goes through all these pastors and all these different churches all interpreting the Bible in certain ways to make it to go with the indoctrination, right? And so that's if you don't see that, you don't see that, but calling me Paula and leaving these like unintelligible comments isn't going to change the facts that the Bible has been manipulated and it can't be the Word of God because it's so fucked up anyway, and the obsession with foreskins, but also because it isn't Jesus's direct words. It's 2,000 years old and it was changed almost immediately, and it was filtered through the disciples. Most of these things, most of the New Testament, all of it is filtered through the disciples. Some of it through Paul, who didn't even know Jesus. And so, the accuracy of it being Jesus' words, it's not even Jesus' words. It's other people's interpretation of Jesus' words that was then edited and manipulated and translated. And so the original meaning is not going to be accurate, right? So there's that. All right, let's get back to it here. Okay, so let's continue on here. There is... Okay, so there's not that much more to go here, so we might as well go through it all. Because there's only about 10 minutes left, I would say. What's that say there? Yeah, so 10 minutes. We can get through 10 more minutes. So, this story, I didn't really want to cover it. Like, it was barely mentioned when Charlie Kirk got shot. Like, I barely mentioned it, and I thought that's all I was going to do. Like, I had to mention it because it's like people were talking about it. But I didn't know who it was. I had no idea what this was. Then his wife showed up. And, she was so fucked. And nobody was talking about it in terms of these types of bigger channels. And as far as I can tell, people were, uneasy to call her out on her bullshit. Maybe in comment section, but not so much in videos. I don't know who else was doing that in the beginning, but she was so fake. And, it was so bad. And so, but no one wants to, disparage a grieving widow, especially then. No one knew how the audience was feeling about it because people started to show up on my channel saying, thank God somebody's actually saying this, right? Candace is very annoying to me, but she's funny. Like sometimes she says things that I find funny. And she's good at her job. She's competent. She's really good at making these videos. She's good at drawing in an audience. She's got these abilities, but none of those things really appeal to me. And she's going to say this about the meeting here.
They were forthcoming with it. That feels good. That feels good, guys. Like, wow, we don't have to guess. Now we have solid answers. And like I said, when you come out and give solid answers and you're not weird and calling people names and saying all this stuff, it allows people to go, okay, I feel a bit more like we can trust this process because we have communication.
Yeah, but that's just because that's good for you, but not for everybody else. Because TPUSK has imploded. Like they're fucked. The way they handled this, you don't come back from it. Even if there has to be, like I said, you can't do this if you don't know what the wife is going to do, you don't know what the widow is going to do. You can't do this. If you're, whoever pulled this off, you can't do this unless the widow's going to go with the Patsy story and be, she has to be compromised. And so that speaks to their marriage. That speaks to her love for Charlie. That speaks to the legitimacy of her kids and these things. So she's fucked, and she's always been the problem. Candace doesn't want to make her the problem. She wants to talk about Egyptian planes. She's going all over the fucking place. There's all these other side channels and all these other, people posted things like the explosion, the electrocution theory, all these things, right? There's all these various, threads out there. But in terms of this organization and its influence on Trump, and Trump is imploding. I want to show you a Trump tweet when I get done with this, and then we'll come back to the rest of this stuff. But in terms of all this, Erica's unbearable. Candace is annoying, but the story itself is interesting. But there has to be some, like, when are we going to wrap this fucking thing up, right? Are we going to wait till May until Tyler Robinson, she obviously they didn't talk about Tyler Boyer accusations of being gay, which she brought up, and they brought up, and that would have been part of their meeting, but somehow she's avoiding that. Like she said she had evidence. Did you show them the evidence that Tyler Boyer's gay? And that, he was hitting on interns, which is a human resource issue and not something that young Christian men and their parents want to have happen at a Christian organization. That would be enough to tank the organization. I don't know what this last 10 minutes is about. But, like, this has to have some kind of, let's wrap this fucking thing up, right? Just, Candace can't present the never-ending rabbit hole. And when the evidence hearings in May, there'll be more, whatever it is. But at some point, everyone's going to be like, all right, this is boring, right? There's nothing to see here. I mean, not just boring. It's like we're never going to get resolution. And that's kind of where they've reached this point here.
That's the reality. And so I wanted to update you with that. Also, another thing that really, I think, surprised them and I think surprised me is getting back to this Hamptons retreat. The thing about the Hamptons retreat, and I communicated this with them, that makes me so uncomfortable is how many little lies were told. I think I've been clear about that. Like Seth Dillon definitively pressed Charlie at this event, whether it was in a hypothetical, which it was in a hypothetical, but he got fired up in the hypothetical of Charlie discussing potentially tweeting something against Bibi Netanyahu. It did lead to this firecracker moment. Again, this is one of those things where I go, why am I always being hung out to dry for telling people the truth? Especially when I wasn't going, oh, well, Seth Dillon killed Charlie Kirk.
So, this is where she makes it about her. And that's her big problem. This isn't about you. Like, this is, you're covering stories here, right? People can tune into you because they like you and they like what you have to say, and they want to hear what you have to say about any number of events. They want to hear your opinion, and that's some of her audience, right? But more so, she's, sort of the catch-all for all the people who didn't believe in the official story, and she's got the big channel out there. And then, she has all these resources, and they all kind of working together. And then, TPUSK was, doing what they were doing, which was, imploding. So, but anyways.
I just, this happened. It factually happened, and yet everybody's kind of putting out these weird statements, and they're not being honest in them. And I was saying to them, that made me feel really weird. And I would love to know more about this Bibi Netanyahu offer to fund Turning Point to the next level, at which point Erica said she was not aware of that happening. It is obviously totally possible that...
That's not possible if she's married to the guy, right? So if they had the kind of marriage where Charlie Kirk was being pressured to where he would go on Megyn Kelly's and show and say, I was being pressured and these guys were harassing me and they were questioning my character and all these things that he was saying. Like he was out there with all these things. And then he wrote he brought everyone in a chain and he said, I'm done with these guys bullying me. They're bullying me. He's being bullied by his biggest donors. And so he has something to weigh. Does he cut off his primary shekel source, right? He's got a big payroll, right? of what I originally heard was when I asked ChatGTP, it was 450 people, and now they're saying it was 650. So I calculated it like 45 or 50 grand a person, which would be probably a low guess because some of those people are probably making hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So, but at 50,000 a person, it was $21 million, something like that payroll, right? 400 and something people, and if it was another 200 people, which would be another third, well, that would be I don't know, 60 million. I mean, so they have a huge payroll, just their payroll, and then all their bills. They're building things. They got to maintain these buildings. They have structures, and they're trying to grow, and they have all these things. They have a lot of financial needs, right? And so if he's going through that, he didn't talk to his wife about the Hamptons retreat. She's not privy to any of that information. He didn't talk to her about that. He was thinking about cutting. Like this is they got a couple of young kids, and you have a wife at home. You're not going to talk to her about, and she's involved with the. I mean, she's going to be the person running it. You didn't talk to her at all. Like either you had no relationship, like he's gay, and there was just a front marriage, which of course makes this whole, like she doesn't really love him or whatever it is, but she talks about him all the time, and like he didn't at all. He didn't say anything about the Hamptons retreat, or his changing his views on Israel, but he was telling everybody else, including Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly. Like he made that decision to bring Dave Smith in and these other people, and he knew his donors wasn't going to like it. He didn't bounce that off of Erica, his wife. Well, then they had no relationship, right? So either she's lying or they had no relationship, or the relationship was completely fake, which is, worse than no relationship. It's a fake relationship.
Was kept in the business lane of Turning Point USA. But I'm certain, I said, I am absolutely certain that I did not get this from an obscure source that BB offered to fund Turning Point to the next level. And it was part of my frustration with that sit down with Alex Clark, where Andrew said, oh, there was not $150 million that's made up. I told them, Andrew Kovet was my source. Andrew Kovet told me verbatim that Bibi Netanyahu offered to take Turning Point to the next level and that Charlie turned that money down. So I said there's a bit of a predicament when I'm being like lambasted by all of these voices and people that are attacking me and these paid campaigns. And when I say paid, yes, okay, actually have the names of people. Different ways they're being paid. Some are being paid by PR firms.
This is too much about you're talking shit about me. Well, you're talking shit about me. This is not what this should go, right? Like for Candace Owens, it's good that they're talking shit about her. It props her up. Like she's benefiting tremendously from TPUS gay folding. And, moving forward, she has that audience. She has all that audience is all over in her corner, and they have nothing left. So, this is going to benefit them if she stops talking about them, because some of the people who are tuning into their show are haters. If the haters go away, they'll get no views at all, right? They're a channel right now and a social media outlet where most of the stuff that comes to them is oppositional, which is they're completely upside down. And that's, a company that needs to benefit from donors. I mean, they're going to have to drastically reduce their financial, requirements, and they're not going forward with this thing. And so I can understand why they don't want to piss off Israel, but without an audience and with things going the way they are on college campuses and the rest of it, they have this kind of handled. Israel doesn't need TPUS gay like they needed it before. They don't need Charlie Kirk because the Gaza thing's over and people sort of, are not thinking about this as much. And, TPUS gay has no influence over these people. And the more that they shill for Israel, the more they're going to get hammered by the people, the comment section, everywhere else. So they're completely fucked, right? And so if anybody was advising Erica, they would say, jump on this bandwagon because you're not getting any more money from these pro-Israeli donors anyway. And, this thing's over. But she's not going to do that because, whatever her handlers are telling her to do.
Being paid by Prager University, which is upsetting to me because I know Marissa and it's just dirty. But it's especially crazy when people are calling it a conspiracy when I share things that are told to me from the spokesperson of Turning Point USA. Okay? that's weird. And yes, they were forthcoming, and nobody's ever denied this. So this was not on our list of lies about the fact that Bibi Netanyahu did call him. Okay, that did happen. Bibi shared that, by the way. Our source for that could have just as well been Bibi Netanyahu. And not a lot of clarity on, I don't know, why some people think he didn't make this offer, and why definitively 3 different sources who would have knowledge of this confirmed to me that Bibi Netanyahu didn't.
Okay, so let's move forward with this part. Let me show you the Trump tweet here, and then we'll come back to this. Okay, so I saw this morning. For those of you that think I am close with the new owners of CBS, please understand that 60 Minutes has treated me far worse since the so-called takeover. They have never treated me before. If they are my friends, I hate to see my enemies. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, he's lost his shit, right? And these are, I read another tweet the other day about Rob Reiner. But, there's no sense of anybody making sure he doesn't make, just have some level of, well, let's put it this way. The thing I loved about Trump's first term, was Trump didn't act presidential, right? Like, that was great because that's all fake. To pretend that these people are good people and they're the president, and there should be some reverence for the president, and the president's some sort of like exalted being, that the essence of the presidency, breathing in the presidency. They used to talk about this on that show, West Wing, when you step into the presidency. There's this, and that's a true thing. It comes with all this power and all this prestige, but it's all fake, right? It's all smoke and mirrors. The people are horrible. The way to get to the presidency becomes more and more depraved, more and more, swampy, more and more cesspool-y, all these things. And so when Trump came in and was a total piece of shit and would tweet late at night, he drove everyone crazy because he was embarrassing the office of the presidency. But in truth, he was just being the scumbag that all of them are. He was just not hiding it. Even though he was still a lying piece of shit, he was, he was doing it pretty overtly. But at this point, with everything falling apart, he's just acting in a way that's just totally unacceptable, right? And again, I'm kind of a little bit in favor of it, but not really, because, it's just, it's old. Like, it's no longer funny. It's just, he's just lost his shit. And no one should allow him to do this. His handlers, and, he still has handlers, and they're just pushing, they're just dry. The Republican Party's fucked. And all these people that push for Trump to be president, Candace Owens included, and TPUSK, but all of them, all these people who are in the so-called truth community, everyone said that he was better than Kamala. Kamala would have been her own separate disaster. But the reality is it was silly to vote at all, and there was no hope, and there's no hope for any kind of political solution, which I've covered in depth over the years, and that should be kind of acknowledged by people now. That, it was wishful thinking, and, it doesn't cost anything to anybody, because Kamala wouldn't have been better. She just would have been a different version of suck. But, everyone should realize that there's no political solution now. That J.D. Vance certainly isn't going to get done, and neither is Gavin Newsom, and anybody else they shit out. Even if they were the greatest person in the world, they couldn't combat the depravity that exists in this political arena, and the fact that America, it's just time for America to, to go tits up, right? It's time. So with that in mind, let's get back to this, thing with Candace Owens, because that's a part of this whole thing, her and Turning Point USK. Because, Candace Owens is sort of disavowing Trump a little bit, which is good, but not enough to be really, not as much as she should. But they're not doing it at all. They're pretending that Trump and their show is still great. So let's get back into that here. That shows you how fucked all these people are. Because they're fighting over something that, they should all be apologizing for, right? They should all be apologizing for what's happened, because they failed their audience and they failed people by endorsing something. It's like you've endorsed a product, and the product is like killing people and destroying the economy, and bringing in martial law and doing all the shit that you expected it wouldn't do. And then you're on the hook for this because you verified this, you endorsed this, right? You put your reputation, you staked your reputation on this, and your audience trusted you and believed you. Of course, they were already believed it anyway, but you're a part of this like problem. And, like all the Republicans, all the people who voted for Trump, kind of owe everybody some sort of an apology, right? Just like the people that voted for Biden owe everyone an apology for that, right? Not that I believe in apologies or any of this stuff, but they owe everybody at least a sense of, yeah, we fucked you guys, right? Because anybody voting is doing that. Because again, like you can vote for local elections and some of these other things, but you're part of a systemic view that this is actually a democracy and your vote counts and it matters and it doesn't. And so if everyone backs away from that and people didn't vote and realized that they wouldn't have any control over any of these things, it would change the way that people went about all of this kind of stuff, because you have to find different ways to have influence. If voting doesn't matter, then how do you make your voice heard, right? If like voting is just performative, then like how does your what leverage you have as people over these politicians and these businesses? And you have to start thinking about creative ways to boycotting, I guess, maybe something, and I don't even know, or at the very least you got to fall before God and beg for forgiveness and say, what do you want us to do, right? Because we've reached that level of fucking desperation. All right, let's get back to this Candace Owens thing. Okay, so I went to Erica Kirk's Twitter page, and I want to take all this shit down, right? And she didn't do anything other than what she wrote yesterday, that it was a productive meeting. And then I looked at Candace Owens' Twitter page, and she's got like 8 or 9 tweets. And I found this one to be particularly funny here. My long overdue sit down with Erica Kirk. The media begins writing pure fan fiction about me because we are getting close. Tim Pool is gay. So I was hoping that she would talk about Tim Pool being gay in the video, but she doesn't. So I don't know if that's gay in terms of, like the way you just an insult as opposed to saying that he's homosexual. But he's very effeminate and he's a twink. But one thing she doesn't talk about, so in the rest of the video, she talks about the Egyptian planes, which I don't know how many people want to hear about that shit, because I certainly don't. And I don't think you do at this point. So it was kind of like there's some movement, but mostly it's nothing. It was, it's probably going to make things worse, and really it just, it's anticlimactic. And so, an anti-climax. So, I'm not sure where this thing goes from here in terms of my coverage, in terms of any of these other things. These things just fade. She does talk about, and I'll cover this in a second, she does get into the TPUSK response, or the video that they weren't supposed to shoot because there's supposed to be a truce. I don't know if she says anything about that. I haven't watched that. And so let's go to that here. But the big thing that I want to say is the Tyler Boyer thing. And now let me just search the video again just in case she said something more about him. But the reality is the biggest scandal for TPUSK is the guy who was second in charge to Charlie and had influence over Charlie's relationship with Erica. He introduced them and had relationships with, and Erica Kirk's, more information is coming out about her and having this boyfriend that was scrubbed that also had to do with Tyler Boyer. And that Tyler Boyer, was hiring all these people, and that there were interns and other people saying that he was gay and he had these relationships, or at least bisexual. And that would be a real fucking nail in the coffin for TPUSK. And she doesn't seem to want to go there, even though she said she had evidence, right? Now, Candace says she has evidence a lot and then doesn't provide it or produce it. And so who knows what she really has, or, what this is really about. But, that would be something of interest, right? That would be a story where, she was going to talk about that when she originally was answering that Angry Twink's original post about them having this, Monday was supposed to be this big day of disclosure and debunking all these conspiracy theories. And one of them was about this guy being gay, and then, or I don't know if they said that or she just said it, but she did say it. And she said she had evidence and people who had, that worked in the organization And why not talk to Erica Kirk about that? Because, if you have a guy who was second in command who was hitting on interns, young men, maybe young heterosexual men, that's a real fucking problem. And, like, you just can't walk away from these things that you say because, that would be something much more interesting and much more damning than this Egyptian plane bullshit, right? And let me just say this. So one of the things, the Alex Jones kind of stuff, and, there's certain truthers who are like this. There's these truthers that saying they were being targeted, and there was one clown who was claiming that, the energy weapons were hitting him, and I guess he spilled water on his laptop and made it spark or something. This I didn't see it. People had told me about it. But, like the stuff that Candace Owens is doing now, where they constantly talk about the mainstream media is out to get them, and, the mainstream media is, all the things that the mainstream media is saying about them and all these things. I am truly a person who has been disenfranchised by YouTube and, not even, ignored by the mainstream media isn't even like, I'm not even a blip on the radar. But the system is clearly against me in various ways. Like my life is much harder because I'm awake. And, I have been shadow banned significantly by YouTube. My channel was much bigger than it was now in terms of subscribers and view count. I was getting hundreds of new subscribers a day, and I was getting, sometimes hundreds of thousands of views, things like this, right? Of course, my content was different then. Too, it was worse, but it appealed to more, it was more based in stuff that dumb fucks could watch, and, it was less about things that would push people away. So, some of it's the content, but most of it's being, basically prejudiced against. And I almost never talk about it. And I don't talk about like I'm whining a victim about it because it just is what it is. And, I realize I'm probably a lot better off being under the radar, just, in general. But these guys are constantly talking about Erica Kirk, talking about all the haters. People talk about haters. I mock comments, but I'm not bummed by them. Like, sometimes I'm hoping people leave negative comments because I just really want to take a shit. I want to go and shit on somebody, right? Just, I've had enough and I'm like ready to, slam somebody just because, I'm in a bad mood or not. Maybe I don't get really in bad moods, but, sometimes more feeling like a little bit more fighty and aggressive. But, it's all in fun. I'm not, there's no hatred or anything. And I don't care. It's just none of this stuff matters, right? But these people are constantly whining about mainstream media is out to get me, and they said this, and Tim Pool said this, and and sometimes Candace Owens makes it funny. Erica Kirk played the victim. A lot of them just play victims. But, this is a very oppositional world, the internet and the cyber universe, and it's a very opinion, belief-based situation, and people have strong feelings about things, and it doesn't mean anything. It should have no effect on you. The way that other people feel about you or feel about us as a group or a demographic, it really should have no effect at all because it's meaningless, right? If it prevents you from getting a job or, it somehow affects your life or whatever, in some real way, then sure. But other than that, it's meaningless. Like most of this stuff is meaningless. Like I was saying in my last video, I think I was talking about how, this has value when you're, you realize the system's fucked, but you feel like you're the messed up one because everyone else can, deal with the fucked up system. It's like when your family's fucked up and finally somebody talks to you about it and says, hey, you're not crazy, your family is fucked up, right? It doesn't change the system being fucked up, but it helps to give you some sense of, you're not like, you're not wrong. You are, there is a problem. The DSM-5, I have a master's degree in counseling, and I have to do psychological assessments, and I used to have to diagnose people. And, I kind of believe in it, but it's very negative. Psychology is all about the problem and not the solution, and that's one issue, which is different from the meditation that I do, which is much more effective. It helps clean away things that need to be cleaned away, and then you focus your mind in a positive direction in terms of your spiritual evolution. But it also never factors in the fucked up system. And that's what's really fucked up about the DSM-5 and the psychological model. because there's nowhere in the DSM-5 that says we have a fucked up system. It's always you that's the problem. It's always you who's fucked up. It's always you that has to be diagnosed. It's always you that can't cope. Everyone else is doing fine. Why are you so fucked up, fucker? Right? Here's your diagnosis. Take that and your fucking slap on the ass and get out of my office. Right? You know, you're the one who needs to be medicated because you can't deal with this fucking amazing system that's not demonic or fucked up at all. You're fucked up. Right? So that's our psychological model. Also kind of our medical model, that you're supposed to be healthy, but you're eating shit for food, you know, poisonous food that's, you know, that has carcinogens in it that causes cancer and things that is about heart disease. And then, you know, all of it. It's like, so we have a really fucked up system, but they never blame the system. And if you don't deal with it, you're the one who's fucked up. Why can't you get along? Everyone else is doing it, you know, so, and that's what the truth community has value, you know, to whatever extent. I mean, across the board, acknowledging that the system's fucked up and people are fucked up and the powers that be are fucked up. And, you know, and it's not your fault. Like, you know, you're doing your best, most people, you know, in a fucked up system, and it's had an effect on you. And not that you're not responsible for your actions, but knowing that the system's fucked up is like, you know, it helps you cope, right? So what I'm talking about is coping here. Anyways, let's get back into it. Okay, so this is, you know, getting old for me. I'm sure it is for you. So this is the live stream. I just want to see what you had to say about this, but as briefly as possible.
An alarm. Something else that I wanted to show you, by the way, I thought we were not supposed to be doing live streams while we were speaking, but Turning Point, I guess, has their daily show, but that I didn't feel like that was communicated to me. It felt like a ceasefire and then it got violated, but they had an interesting conversation on their show yesterday, on the Charlie Kirk show, about this trial, the upcoming trial, about Tyler Robinson, and here is what they had to say. Take a listen.
So this is straight from the charging document. It says Robinson's mother explained that over the last...
Okay, let's go to see what she says about this, and then we saw these guys already.
And so those whole that whole theory kind of goes out the window.
So unless I am mistaken, and I am not perfect, but I do feel like we worked really hard to see when this location was first revealed. The first time that we found that the courtyard was mentioned, because Charlie's speaking at events. So
right. So, you know, who gives a shit about what she says about the location? I'll suffer through this, and if there's anything else, I'll show you. She did talk about how they violated the truce. I mean, what they said was so ridiculous, it doesn't even need a rebuttal. Because they were supposed to have a big reveal, and they had these two little fucking important details that they debunked, you know, sort of, you know, with a lot of like that doesn't really debunk thing kind of, responses. You know, they're not really debunking it. They said, well, you can get access to the roof. Yeah, of course you can. Like, you know, in a normal day when there's no event there, somebody could climb up to the roof. Yeah, that's true. But, you know, it wasn't like you had to be Spider-Man or some shit or be dropped in on a helicopter. There's roof access to almost every fucking building. Right? They fucking talk about it. It's still silly. And the other guy saying, based on the evidence, I don't know how long this is. Let me see if I can get through it here, and then I'll come back and, you know, move on to something else here if she doesn't say anything important. And she's not important, but interesting. Okay, so what she thinks is good here isn't good for everybody else, including me. But here, let's let her wrap this up.
That at least you're going to defend people when they're being called liars when they're telling the truth about something. That would feel more authentic, I think. And so I am, just to say this, very happy that we are on much better feet and that we have opened the lines of communication. I do genuinely think that Justin Stripe did a great job reffing that conversation yesterday. And I also do want to shout out Megyn Kelly, because we were trying to make this happen in the background really since Blake Neff fumbled the first invite. And thank you. That's in large part because of you guys at home that were like, what the F was that? And I think that they got enough flack that they were like, okay, we got to fix this. But
okay, so that's a different timeline than Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly said 2 weeks. And it was 10 days or less when he fumbled the first, you know, invite thing. But, you know, let's just let her.
I want to commend him for making that happen, for being the person that, kind of rolled up his sleeves and was like, okay, let's actually make a conversation happen and start answering some questions, which I think was done well. And Megyn Kelly, who was initially going to, when we were going to live stream the conversation before the Barry Weiss moment, Megyn Kelly offered to ref that conversation. I felt like she would have done a very good job. I do think that she has kept it very even. She has not been hysterical and it's demonic, it's evil, how dare Candace? And I appreciated that. She has said, I don't agree with Candace, but I also don't think that she's doing this because she's been possessed by a demon. I think she actually believes these things, and I do. And I have a right to believe those things.
Okay, so anyways, the problem here is Erica Kirk hasn't tweeted anything, but we had a productive conversation. And she's probably not going to say anything about this, right? So Candace is going to give her response here. TPUSK is going to, they don't want to deal with this. They haven't wanted to deal with this since the beginning. They want to say the official story's great, and, we're grieving, and we're going to do what we're going to, keep Charlie's vision going strong. And they hope their audience is going to come back to them, and they're fucking not. They don't, they don't understand the internet. They don't understand how people are. They don't understand, there's nothing. What do they have to offer? I'll show you their channel again in a second. What do they have to offer? People don't give a shit about these two guys they have on there. So maybe they can bring in some new talent, but they got to fucking, but what talent do they have, right? Because Charlie Kirk wasn't that great, and, the whole thing is you're moving forward or you're moving backwards. And this happens to channels all the time. It happens to people, they become less relevant, right? You have to reinvent your content all the time. Not just because of your audience, but because of you. There's people they're still talking about the Illuminati. It's just, they're still making the same videos they made 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I mean, they're still doing the same old bullshit, right? You have to evolve, and, there has to be, because it gets boring, and, this, whatever it is, and things are changing all the time. And so you have to adapt to, keep the thing alive and not just, droning on about the same shit over and over again. And so, there's always these points, I have points about divinity within you, and that's timeless, especially since, it isn't even its time yet. People aren't even ready for that message, which is, really a bummer, because that's knowing that God exists inside of you. I mean, there are other cultures and places in the world where kids and people grow up with that idea, but in America, because of the shitty religion and then all the other bullshit, the materiality, people don't even understand that, which sucks. But then, some of these other things, you can't fix the system, so then what are you going to do next, and the rest of it. A lot of these things people aren't, ready for, and maybe never will be, the majority of them. But in terms of her and them coming together, nothing's changed. They are hoping they get some kind of reprieve, and that Candace was getting so angry at them and unloading on them all the time that's, she's not going to hammer them as much. But the fucking audience isn't going to change. Just because Candace is not into it anymore, or you've got her on a more kumbaya basis, that doesn't mean that the rest of us are going to be there. And you've already lost your audience. Why is your audience going to come back to you? You got to have to understand you've lost them, or you have to create a new audience, and you're not going to do that. So, and the people who were your audience, they were in part, they weren't, convinced about Israel being the way it is. I mean, you're seen as an Israeli, everything's moved in a direction that sucks for TPUSK. All right, let's go to their channel here. Okay, so these were the videos that popped for them, laying out the evidence that points Tyler Robinson as the assassin. 43,000 views. The he didn't act alone. You see this right here. This helps, pointing to that guy. He didn't act alone. And it didn't help them. Having that there. They still got hammered in the comment section. 100% of the comments I read were like, you guys suck, fuck you. And then huge evidence debunks Charlie Kirk conspiracy theories. Again, 82,000 views. And all the comments were like, fuck you guys suck, And so, those were the two videos that popped. And then it's 6,000 views. Everything we know about the foiled New York the New York whatever terror plot. What's New York? Is that New York? I don't know. Nye? Is it Bill Nye? Don't even know what that is. This was New Year's Eve. Breaking down the devastating shootings at Brown University, 8,000 views. Everything know about Rob Reiner and his wife. You know what? Let's go read the comments to that too. 17,000 views. Erica joins the Charlie Kirk show to discuss Charlie's final book. 84,000 views. She got hammered in all these ones. They're getting hammered in the comment section, right? But this was I don't know what that was there. The student honors Charlie Kirk at school, then gets a criminal investigation. New data on the rise of the left-wing violence, 7,000 views. That isn't working. TPUS, like he's in, this idea that Charlie thought the left wing was going to get him. His audience is not concerned with their anti-left-wing videos anymore because Trump turned out to be a piece of shit and he doesn't release the Epstein files. And so, demonizing the left isn't working. People have moved on, especially since Biden isn't president. It's a lot easier to demonize the left when the left is in power. And so they got hammered in this thing with that fucking guy, whatever his name is, Glenn Beck. And so they're getting slammed here. They don't have any views. They don't have an audience. And then this amazing parallels between Charlie Kirk and George Bailey from It's a Wonderful Life. 9,000 views. And so let's look at the comments to both those videos.
Friends,
here.
the Charlie.
And so Culver means to cover. Great analogy. This is one that's popped. I just popped the perky. I'm not sure what that means. Charlie, I thought you were dead. Oh my God, I missed you. I thought you were dead. So I don't know what this one is. God bless Titus. I'm not sure what that is about. Parallel between Charlie and Ian Z in Sharknado 7 movie. Titus is such a sweetheart. I'm glad he contacted you with all sharing with us. I guess that guy Titus. Why don't you hold the agreement why don't you hold the agreement not to live stream or message until the meeting between Eric and Candace? You guys can't be trusted ever. You should stop using Charlie's name. Charlie Kirk was an apostate. Oh, who gives a fuck about that thing? So, amazing parallels between Weasel and Kirk. Wessel. How the fuck do you still upload? Yeah, let's leave that one there because that's the big question.
Charlie Kirk.
And so this is Rob Reiner and his wife. There are people saying positive things about All in the Family and Rob Reiner. So for some reason they're not hammering them, but they're giving them more R.I.P. Rob and thank you. R.I.P. Rob and your wife as well. That's so sad. Most people, so terrible, pray for your daughter, are more positive with Rob, liberal fucking Reiner, and more compassionate than they are to Erica Kirk and the fucking boneheads. Like they're getting positive Rob Reiner thing here. So, love you guys, thinking and praying for you often. I'm not sure she means who you guys are. But anyways, that's TPUSK. So that's, they're done. There's nothing here. Stick a fork in them, right? There's absolutely nowhere for them to go. Because this guy sucks. And the other guys with him are worse. And so, it's Andrew Colvey. I thought it was Colvette. So is that, or is that a misspelling? Anyway, who gives a shit? All right, let's move on to other stuff here. Okay, so one of my viewers sent me this. There are no pictures taken by random people of Charlie Kirk's kids, which is a valid point. This guy puts annoying music behind him and, the hoodie and the hat look. Right? But, he has valid points here.
I'll say whatever I want on this page. This is my backup account. Send me a logical explanation for why there are 0 pictures of this family out in public taken by random people. Because if you'll notice, the only pictures that exist are ones they wanted taken, clearly staged for narrative. And it doesn't even matter if the kids are actors or if it's AI because it's clearly staged. And
that music is so annoying. But that's a valid point. Anything that's clearly staged. I mean, when you're using your kids as props, and so if these kids are not real, which, I speculated and other people did about this because it is all staged, and they don't really exist in any other way, right?
Yes, they said that they made the decision to never reveal their kids' faces, but that doesn't mean that anyone else is going to respect that. There are no candid or paparazzi photos of this family. Yeah, this is pretty convincing, right? But like, where's the hundreds of photos that all of these people over here would have been taking? It's simply not possible for someone as popular as Charlie to go out in public with his kids and there not be tons of photos of them.
Yeah, this thing was, this photo. I mean, he said it like, I assume a Cubs game. What does that say there? Unless they're, I don't know, in Arizona. But either way, there's people who hate them and wouldn't honor their kids thing, or people who just don't care. They want to. I mean, it's just the whole thing. And so, I mean, mostly this points to this marriage not being real. And most of the TPUSK thing is a bunch of people who don't really believe in Republican Christian ideology. And if that's the case, Candace Owens would know that their kids aren't real. She would know that she's not married. She wouldn't even meet with this bitch, right? So I mean, she would know that this is just fake, and she's going along with it. And then all the other people, Tucker Carlson, all those people, that there would be, the people at TPUSK would not be right-wing Republican Christian people, but they would be actors and performative, just like QAnon. They would be there to drag people down a rabbit hole or whatever, which is, at this point, that's the most likely conclusion, that this was always fake and it was always a mess. And mostly their audience was contrived and paid for, and it wasn't really as big as they said, and they just, it was a complete hoax. I mean, it was just a bullshit thing put out there. And Charlie Kirk didn't have as many fans as they say. And the ones that he did gather was because they had so much money and they threw it at it. And then the people that he's left behind are so much worse than he is. And this was never real. And this woman's just an MK Ultra beta sex kitten. And she's just, whatever she is. She's just pimped out to this whole thing. And she sucks at acting. And it's just, something that it's just too incompetent for it to be this, to have any sort of this is a poorly executed psychological operation. Like, it shouldn't be this bad. And this, and maybe all the stuff that they're trying to point out about Tyler Robinson is a distraction about what the real issue is that TPUSK was always fake, and Candace Owens was a big part of that. So, this is all covered to pretend that what they had once was real and Charlie was once great, and none of those things are true. Anyways, let's move away from all this stuff because, it sucks. Okay, so I got this video basically done. I don't really want to add much to it. I'll leave it open in case there's some big thing to add. I don't want to add any more Candace stuff. She has a video coming out pretty soon. It's around 4:30, 4:44 right now, 4:43 to be exact. I want to go back through the comments. There was one comment here. Hey, Paul, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the trailer to Spielberg's new Alien movie. Yeah, I saw it. Looked a little bit interesting. Then I saw it with Steven Spielberg, and, he has weird fetish with, penises and, kids, and, he's got that weird shit. Close Encounters of the Third Kind was a good movie. I guess E.T. for, in a way. I mean, there's a lot of weird shit in that movie. But, I don't, it's called Full Disclosure or Disclosure or something like that. So, I'll definitely watch it when it, goes to wherever it lands. If I have that app, I'll watch it. But other than that, I don't, the Spielberg part is always the issue. But, could be interesting, right? I mean, there could be some reveals to it. So the majority of the comments so far we're actually very happy and psyched that there's a 5-hour video that I just uploaded today. Like this video, like I said, this won't go up till 9 p.m. Tomorrow on Thursday. And, it almost feels like a Friday today. And then I won't put another video up till Saturday. So usually that day there'll be a big video, like a bigger video because I have more time to work on it. and I'll do a wrap up of all this stuff. I just want to say one more thing about this thing with Erica Kirk, and then Candace and the rest of it. We all we're pressured to lie and act. We're pressured to not be ourselves in various circumstances, or to have different versions of ourselves based on where we are, right? There was a guy that I played basketball with. He was on my intramural team, and he was from Bridgeport, Connecticut. Bridgeport, Connecticut is right next to Fairfield County, which is one of the richest counties in the country, right? All these rich New York people work in New York, but they live in Connecticut. They commute, and it's by the ocean. And there's these places like in Maryland by D.C. and some of these big cities where really rich people live, like billionaires, multimillionaires, these kind of people. Hamptons type of people. And he was Polish, and he wanted to be like a male model. He was trying to be like those European sort of gayish new wave rockers, whatever. Like he'd done some modeling or something like that. And like he would change his accent. When he played basketball, he would talk about being from Bridgeport, which was one of the toughest towns, and they had some projects there called Father Panic, and he had gone to school there and played high school basketball. And he was like he was really pale, blonde-haired white guy who looked like one of these new wave models, one of those like weird European haircuts. And when he was playing basketball, he would change his accent. We used to make fun of him for this. And he would talk like he was a city guy, but he really wanted to be in finance. And when he was talking to people who were, in the financial world, he would change his accent, right? Like he would say he's from Fairfield County. So, when he wanted to act like a tough guy and he was playing sports, he was from Bridgeport, but when he was, in business or trying to impress a girl or impress somebody, he would say he was from Fairfield County, right? And people have these different ways of acting. They have these different personas they put on. People. I've been talking about this in recent videos and voiceovers. And it's a level of being self-conscious, and having to perform, and all these people now with social media. But there are these moments in life where they should cut through all of the bullshit. Like sometimes a marriage, certainly if you're getting married, I mean there might be a lot of drama and a lot of issues and a lot of stress surrounding a big event like that in terms of like just the logistics or whatever it is, and family drama. But like the birth of a child, is just like, it's just something. In fact, even like when we had our cows gave babies, or our cows gave birth, or when our chickens hatch out the chicks, it just changes you. Like there's that great movie, one of my favorite movies, The Children of Men. The Children of Man, The Children of Men. And, it's about a time where the youngest person in the world's an 18-year-old kid who's described as a wanker. This is a British film. And nobody liked the kid, and he was the youngest person. Like, there hadn't been any babies born for 18 years. And, like, this is going to come around. At some point, this is going to happen here, where it's going to be really hard it's already happening now, but it's going to get way worse, where it's going to be really difficult for human beings to conceive. And so, there's this moment where, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, but there's a baby that's born, and it's just the way that everybody's looking at it, right? This miracle of life. Of course, when I heard my kid's heartbeats for the first time using ultrasound, which, I think ultrasound's bad. That's what I'm hearing. I'm not up to date on the research on that, but, there's a magic to it. When you first hear that heartbeat and you feel the presence of so you could really connect with the baby. And then when it's born, when somebody dies, and there's these other days, significant days in your life, that everything changes, right? It's just everything, it's like time stands still, and you're really congruent. Like you're not thinking, you're not self-conscious, you're not, you're just whoever you are, and like you're seeing something wonderful, right? So, there's big days, and then there's your mundane days, and your routine days and things, which are also good. And those are important days. But these big days are the days where you can really it's a day where you experience your experience of that event is really important. And so when somebody dies in your family, if you lose a kid or you lose your spouse, or even when your parents die, even though even if you don't have a great relationship with them, you have to have the space to feel whatever you're going to feel, right? And certainly your spouse, the way that Charlie Kirk was killed, the way that Erica reacted was I immediately have to perform for people, and I immediately have to start filming everything and, fake cry and just stage everything and put stuff on social media, and that's just fucked, right? Like when I saw that, and I think when most people saw that, they were like, what the fuck, right? Like as a person who's just clueless, are you like a reptilian? Like you just, all is what would be expected of you is to go and, weep for like a week and just, you're in a state of shock and just, be with your family and deal with it. But she immediately was giving speeches and, performing and doing that weird whispering shit. And so like that, made this thing, because she's connected to the president and the vice president and is now in charge of this multi-million-dollar organization and this big event where this guy was assassinated right in front of everybody and fueling all kinds of various rumors, like just all the stuff that happened with that. It was like a holy shit, what's going on kind of situation there, right? And she's smack dab in the middle of it. And, it's kind of driven this whole narrative and ultimately her running this company into the ground and this whole, feud with Candace Owens. Her not acting appropriately, but being this woman who's all about family and all about marriage and all about being a submissive wife, and putting her husband in front of herself and, being there for the kids and being a stay-at-home mom and traditional Christian woman. And she, failed this epic test right in front of everybody in a way that made people just out and out uncomfortable. It makes it hard to believe that they were really married and they really had these kids or any of these things. And, that this whole thing is, these relationships are put together. They're not organic. These people don't love each other. Half the time the guy's gay and they're just like completely fucked up people, assets that do the bidding of their controllers, and they have no real influence other than playing some part, almost like, some AI bot in a sense. And we're seeing that more and more be exposed, like where people just don't buy that shit, right? And it's harder and harder for them to run these psychological operations because they, it's really hard to get humans to sustain that kind of performance. Crisis actors aren't nearly as good as these MK Ultra people who are, they live to be a part of these, they're designed, they don't have their own autonomy and they're not individuals. They don't possess sovereignty over their own situation, but that makes them really weird. Like fucking, like it's hard for them to pull this shit off. And when they used to roll them out, it was like, there wasn't social media and they didn't have something this grandiose and, and then everyone just pretending she's okay and this is normal. And they're like, Megyn Kelly, I love Erica Kirk. Do you? Like how could anybody? She's not a real fucking person. She's not an organic person. So, how does Candace Owens meet with somebody like that when there's no, so the whole thing is fucked, right? Okay, so I just made dinner. We had an amazing turkey dinner that we cooked a sous vide turkey, which is really moist, and then we had a couple of them, and we saved a bunch of the turkey in bags so I can make the turkey meal. We have chicken stock in the freezer now from the turkey meals, and I saved some chestnuts in the freezer was served for this stuffing thing I make. So I made the stuffing and mashed potatoes with the turkey. And I was doing work outside, and I came back, and our guinea fowl were going nuts. And which they often do, but one of the chickens was also going nuts. So I went over there, and it was our broody mama, and she was making a big racket with the guinea fowl. And I saw one of the chicks that's now almost a full-grown chicken on the other side of our neighbor's fence, and the head was eating. And I brought the dogs out mistakenly because the dogs chased away whatever it was, so I didn't get to see. I think it was an aerial predator. And then I came in and made the turkey stuff. And I was working on this video, and then my wife was out. She came back, and we went outside, and we had to chase the guinea fowl and the chickens, some of them, into the chicken the hen house. And so, with one predator just, and then one of the other chicks was on the other side of the fence. We had to catch that one. So we had to bring in about 6 of the, I don't know, we got about 18 or 19 chickens now. And unfortunately, they killed one of the younger ones, not the older ones. So that it's kind of a bummer. And now I have to keep my eye open because that predator's coming back. And the chicken, when I first saw it, only the head was missing. And then, I mean, this is, it's part of the story. And most of it was eaten, so it was a whole thing. And then I was watching this show, which I just got a few clips of it. And it features a grieving widow who's practicing grieving, and a guy who said his wife is in on it. From the grave, he left a suicide note. And it, reminded us of Erica Kirk, and I'll show you those clips in my next video or whatever when I get a chance. So here is the one comment that I received. A person wrote, "Let's not pretend the meeting actually took place. The only good thing that will come out of this bullshit event is that one or both of these harpies will absolutely have to give some meaningful ground, which means both will lose followers. That's a win situation for those not duped by the silliness." Again, you don't know whether they met or not, and it would be stupid for them not to meet because, people are watching. And, I mean, there's ways that people have of trying this fucking Egyptian plane shit. People would know whether Erica Kirk left the area. I mean, maybe not, but, why risk it, right? Like, they should meet. They should come together and meet. People in the truth community always say, well, this is a distraction. And why do they need a distraction, right? Like, if this distraction didn't happen, what are people capable of doing in terms of stopping the people that control the system, right? Like, people will distract themselves. People that live pretty, if you have food and you have water and you have a house and you have, your basic needs are taken care of, and you have interests and you have entertainment and you have all the stuff on the internet, TV, right? You have a plethora of content and distractions that are there for you, pleasures, things that will entice you. I mean, the world's full of these things, right? And, people don't have the ability to riot. They just don't have the ability to, form some, kinds of groups and go in and do something that would actually threaten the powers that be. Most of whom you don't even have access to. So why would they need a distraction? Like, why would this have to be a distraction? Like, what would happen? Like I said, if there wasn't any of these distractions, what are people going to do? Basically nothing. My wife just read me that Trump has backed Bayer and Monsanto in some kind of bullshit thing, because that's what Trump does. He backs the money and the fucking evil, and no one's going to talk about that, right? And even if they did, what could people do about it, right? It's done. People could whine about it and make a video and go hold a sign up somewhere and write somebody a very firm letter, So, weakening people, degrading them, and preparing them for a time where you're going to say, fuck you. There's no electricity. There's no internet. Or just, we're reducing those things. Go live in one of these little 10 by 10 boxes. Some 15-minute city. You can't travel anywhere. Give up your car. Give up your lifestyle. And so when that happens, then people might riot. They might do, and we'll see what happens. When those things happen, they have to, whatever way they sell you something like that. But your lifestyle is out of stock. And so, like, all these things, whatever they're doing, whatever they mean, really doesn't matter, right? It's just like, it's all just a waste of time, because it's a dying system that really has no meaningful. It has nothing. It's not. There's no substance, right? It's without soul. It's without God. It's without purpose. It's without a point, right? There's no end. There's no resolution. There's no meaningful understanding of life in some way. Some lesson, some fable, something that has some value to raise your level of consciousness. It's just slop. It's all just slop. And in terms of them losing some audience share. Erica Kirk's never had that. She's never had audience share. She had some kind of podcast and some other bullshit she was doing, but she didn't keep that up. She has her Instagram page that has variety of followers, but not really much in terms of views, certainly lately. But either way, she's just, she doesn't have the kind of following Candace Owens has. And Candace Owens, this is probably her big moment. I don't see, it's like she, having had some kind of relationship with Charlie Kirk and this, whatever this is, other than money and the perceived influence, having lots more views really doesn't make a difference. I mean, I don't know how other people feel about it, but it's just numbers. It's imaginary. Like if you walk out on a stage and you see 5,000 people, it's quite impressive. But if you get 5,000 views like I do daily, it's not nearly like that. Like I don't, it's not real, right? And if you get 1 million people, that's great, monetarily, and then you have influence. People want to run ads on your shit and do whatever they do, all that kind of stuff. Even just 50,000 views a day, like that's something, especially for something that's low budget. That's when you're doing your own thing. But still, it's not, it's not real. Like you don't see 50,000 people. I mean, it's an internet thing, right? It's like so it could be all imaginary. Like in terms of, as far as these people are just bots. Like it doesn't happen in the real world. And anybody who has large audiences in terms of singers and stand-up comedians and people that put on plays or whatever, I mean that after a while doesn't do much for you. It's like getting a thumbs up on Facebook or getting some love on social media platforms. It may be in the beginning it's something, and then there's a diminishing law of return there. My point is that this thing we call the show, the thing I call the show, it's pointless. Like it doesn't really serve any purpose. You don't need to distract the people. People are already degraded. They're already, they'll do whatever the fuck they want. They'll stuff carcinogens and heart disease in their ghoul holes. They'll, watch degraded shit, bad content. They'll, vote for candidates that will never do anything to what they promise. They'll basically do whatever you tell them to. They're, people are pacified. We don't really have another gear, right? We don't have we don't have leverage. We don't have anything. And the people that control the system, they just keep on chugging along in a system that's obviously going to die and, collapse in whatever way possible. And they're not doing anything to prevent the meteor from hitting the planet. So, I mean, that's the kind of situation we're in. Everyone kind of knows we're fucked. And we just keep on punching the clock and going about our routines because, what else are you going to do, right? You have to do something. So you just, keep on doing what you normally do until the meteor hits. On a humorous note, I got this comment. Pocket, Skype doesn't exist anymore. They met in person. Plus her husband joined at first, then left. She says this. Appreciate you, but you got to update the operating system, sir. When did I say Skype? I mean, I don't remember saying Skype. I'll have to search the video, see if I said Skype. But I didn't know Skype was done. Anyways, I got an Apple, so it's not, But it says here, Skype, the pioneering video and voice calling app, was officially retired by Microsoft in May of 2025, shifting users to Microsoft Teams free, which offers similar chat, video, and calling features with data automatically transferred, where core Skype services are gone. Existing page systems redeemed until April 2025, and users, I had Skype for a while. I had my own Skype phone number that people could call me on when I didn't have a cell phone and I was in India. But now Skype is done, and, it's not really that big of a loss. But I didn't realize I said Skype in the video. One of my viewers said Year of the Twink, and I'm going to try to remember that one just in case I don't come up with anything. I don't think it's going to be Year of the Twink because I think this is going to be a significant year because of the predictions and the prophecies of the whispers of the brighter world. So, but that's a good one. And then, I checked my video. I went to check it, but there's no transcript to my video. And I think it's because it's too fucking long. It's 5 hours long. I don't think they transcribe videos that long. So, then my wife sent me something about Erica Franze dating another dude, a University of Kentucky basketball player. And so she's a liar. She likes to lie. She's a liar that likes to lie. Well, anyways, I'm going to wrap this voiceover up here, and if I don't need to, I won't add anything. If there isn't something substantial to add to this video, I'll just upload it, keep it on the short side, and then I have a bunch of jewelry to deal with. At least one thing, a new bracelet that they're pimping out on Facebook that I'll start my next video with. All right, that's it for now. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this video up here. I started the next video already. So the video that's going to be up tomorrow night. Yeah, tomorrow night. So today's Thursday. The video that's going to be up Friday night. And then there'll be nothing on Saturday and a video on Sunday. And so we had a Cooper's Hawk take one of our chickens, so that was something we have to deal with today. We have to make sure it doesn't want to come back into our yard anymore. Usually they don't, once they see there are people involved and they still feel like there's a threat. Anyways, so there's that. And, I started this video with a clip of Candace Owens, and then my next video, I get into it about how she just sucks, right? She just, she is the rabbit hole, right? She just is consistently, which I will expand on in the beginning of the next video. I'm just done with that whole thing, at least that part of it. I'll still watch the cratering of GPUSK because that's funny, and Erica Kirk is maybe more annoying, but she shows up a lot less, right? So, but anyways, like that part, the Candace Owens thing is just, it's pointless, and which is okay if you kind of acknowledge it's pointless, like I do here, in terms of the truther stuff, that there's no, whatever it is. But again, I'll expand on that in the next video. So I guess that's it for here, for now. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, Decimal Point for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.